Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're serious about personal finance, budgeting isn't optional. It's the difference between hoping your money works out and knowing it will. I know what you're thinking. Budget sounds like financial handcuffs. It sounds like saying no to everything you enjoy. It sounds boring, restrictive, and about as fun as watching paint dry while doing your taxes. But that's exactly the lie that keeps most people broke. This is MindSnack Finance, bite-sized lessons with lasting value. The people who actually build wealth, they budget. The people who retire early, they budget. The people who seem to effortlessly afford everything they want while still investing for the future, they definitely budget. The difference is they understand what budgeting actually is, and more importantly, what it isn't. Today, we're going to dismantle every myth you've been told about budgeting and show you why it's the single most powerful tool in your financial arsenal. Not because it restricts you, but because it frees you. Let's break it down. First, let's get clear on what a budget actually is, because most people are fighting against a definition that doesn't even exist. A budget is simply a plan for your money. That's it. It's deciding ahead of time where your dollars are going instead of wondering at the end of the month where they went. It's being intentional rather than reactionary. It's taking control instead of being controlled. Think about it this way. You wouldn't take a road trip without knowing your destination. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint. You wouldn't cook a complex meal without a recipe. Yet somehow people think they can navigate their entire financial life without a plan and expect it to work out. That's not optimism, that's delusion. But here's where everyone gets it wrong. A budget is not about restriction. It's about intention. It's not about telling yourself no. It's about telling yourself yes to the things that actually matter to you. You want to travel more? Budget for it. You want to eat out at nice restaurants? Budget for it. You want a new car? Budget for it. The budget doesn't judge. It just makes sure that when you say yes to something, you're not accidentally saying no to something more important, like your rent, your groceries, or your financial freedom. A budget aligned with your priorities and financial goals isn't a cage. It's a roadmap. It's the difference between wandering aimlessly and walking with purpose toward a destination you actually chose. And that's the key phrase, your priorities, your goals. Not some influencer's idea of what you should want, not your parents' values, not what looks good on Instagram, your actual priorities. Because here's what nobody tells you. You can't budget successfully for someone else's dream. You can only budget for yours. Now let's talk about why this matters. Why budgeting isn't just helpful, but essential. The number one advantage of budgeting is brutally simple. It helps you stay on track with your spending, which means you spend within your means. That's it. That's the game. Everything else is commentary. Most people are flying blind financially. They think they spend about $500 a month on groceries. It's actually $800. They think they're pretty good with money. They're actually spending 120% of their income, filling the gap with credit cards and hoping next month things will be different. A budget forces reality into focus. It makes the invisible visible. You can't lie to a spreadsheet. The numbers are the numbers. And when you know your numbers, something magical happens. You stop overspending. Not because you're using superhuman willpower, but because you've created awareness. You see in real time that ordering DoorDash again means you're stealing from your vacation fund. You see that the small daily coffee run is actually $150 a month that could be invested. Spending within your means sounds obvious, but it's the one thing that separates financial stability from financial chaos. It's the line between building wealth and building debt. It's the difference between being in control and being controlled. People who live beyond their means always have a crisis coming. They just don't know when. People who live within their means have options, and options are freedom. But here's what's powerful. When you spend within your means consistently, you create space. Space to save, space to invest, space to build the life you actually want instead of just paying for the life you accidentally created. A budget doesn't tell you to spend less. It tells you where you're spending now and asks if that's really what you want. Most of the time, like when people actually see their spending patterns, they make different choices. Not because they have to, because they want to. That's the advantage, not restriction, clarity. All right, so you're convinced budgeting matters. Now comes the question, how? There are four main budgeting methods that actually work. Each has its philosophy, its strengths, and its ideal use case. I'll give you the overview here and we'll dive deep into each one in separate videos. But you need to know they exist so you can pick the right tool for your situation. The envelope system is old school, and I mean that literally. Your grandparents probably use this. Here's how it works. You cash your paycheck, divide the physical money into envelopes labeled with categories: rent, groceries, gas, entertainment, whatever. And when the envelope is empty, you stop spending in that category. Simple as that. Period. It sounds ancient in a digital world, but the psychology is powerful. Physical money is harder to spend than plastic. Watching an envelope empty creates visceral awareness that swiping a card doesn't. Some people use a digital version now, but the principle remains. Fixed amounts per category, you could borrow between categories, but you cannot spend more than what you have. The 50-30-20 rule is the one you've probably heard about. It's simple. 50% of your after-tax income goes to needs: housing, utilities, groceries, insurance, the stuff you genuinely need to survive. 30% goes to wants: restaurants, hobbies, subscriptions, vacation, the stuff that makes life enjoyable. 20% goes to savings and debt repayment, your future self and your financial freedom. It's clean, it's easy to remember. It's a great starting point for people who need structure without complexity. The beauty can be customized. Your situation might require a 60-20-20 or 40-30-30, but as a framework, it's solid, it works. Zero-based budgeting is for people who want complete control. Every single dollar gets assigned a job before the month begins. Income minus expenses equals zero. Not because you spend everything, but because every dollar, including the ones going to savings and investment, has a specific purpose. This is the most intentional method. Nothing is accidental. Every dollar is a soldier and you're the general. If you have $4,000 coming in, you assign all $4,000 to specific categories until there's nothing left unassigned. It takes more effort up front, but it gives you absolute clarity and control. My favorite method for sure. Pay yourself first flips the script entirely. You prioritize savings and investment before anything else. The moment money hits your account, a predetermined percentage goes straight to savings, retirement, investments, whatever future-focused goal you have. Then you budget the rest for everything else. This is psychological genius. It removes the temptation to save what's left in my bank account, because there's never anything left. It forces you to live on less than you make by design. It makes your future self the priority instead of an afterthought. Now here's where it gets interesting. You can combine methods. In fact, you should. Pay yourself first and zero-based budgeting work beautifully together. You automate your savings first, then you assign every remaining dollar a job. You're securing your future while maintaining complete control of your present. Try it. You will thank me later. Another possibility. The envelope system can layer on top of the 50-30-20 rule. You calculate your percentages, then manage your spending categories with physical or digital envelopes. The point is, budgeting isn't one size fits all. It's modular. You pick the methods that match your brain, your goals, and your lifestyle. That's the flexibility nobody tells you about. So, how do you actually start? What's the preparation? First, gather your data. You need to know three things: how much money comes in, how much goes out, and where it goes. Pull up your bank statements for the last 2 to 3 months. Categorize every expense, be honest. Brutally honest. This isn't the time for ego or aspiration, this is reconnaissance. Most people discover they have no idea what they actually spend. They're shocked by how much goes to subscriptions they forgot about, food delivery they rationalized, and impulse purchases they don't remember. Second, identify your priorities and goals. What actually matters to you? Not what should matter. What does? Do you value travel, early retirement, freedom to quit your job, buying a house? Your budget needs to reflect your real priorities or you'll sabotage it within weeks. Third, choose your method. Based on what you just learned, which budgeting approach fits your personality? If you need simplicity, start with 50-30-20. If you want control, go zero-based. If you struggle with overspending, try the envelope system. If you never save enough, start with pay yourself first. Fourth, set up your system. And here's the truth. You can run a simple budget in a spreadsheet. No complications. You don't need fancy software. You don't need a subscription service. Google Sheets is free. Excel exists. Create categories, plug in your income, allocate your spending, track your actuals. Done. However, if you want automation and convenience, apps exist. They connect to your bank accounts, categorize transactions automatically, and give you real-time updates. They're helpful for people who won't maintain a manual system, but they're not required. The best budget is the one you'll actually use. If a spreadsheet works, use a spreadsheet. If an app helps you stay consistent, use an app. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Now let's talk about what actually happens when you start budgeting. Because you need to know this up front. A budget is hardly ever perfect. Your first budget will be wrong. Not because you did it wrong, but because you're working with estimates and assumptions. You'll underestimate some categories and overestimate others. That's normal. That's expected. That's part of the process. The key isn't perfection, it's adjustment. The real skill is learning how to balance the different categories to stay on track. Let's say you budgeted $400 for groceries and $200 for entertainment, but groceries cost $500 and you only spent $50 on entertainment. You don't panic, you don't quit, you adjust. Next month, maybe it's $450 for groceries and $150 for entertainment. You're learning your real spending patterns and calibrating accordingly. This is why budgeting is a practice, not a product. You don't create a budget once and forget about it. You review it monthly, you tweak it, you refine it. Over time, your budget becomes a remarkably accurate prediction of your financial life. But, and this is critical, you need a degree of financial discipline to follow your budget. Otherwise, it will quickly turn into another object in your drawer. A budget without execution is just a wish list. You can have the most beautifully organized spreadsheet in the world, but if you ignore it and spend however you want, it's worthless. It becomes another thing you feel guilty about, another reminder of good intentions and failed follow-through. Discipline doesn't mean perfection, it means consistency. It means checking your budget before making purchases. It means saying no when a category is tapped out, even if you really want to say yes. It means choosing your future over your impulse, your goal over your whim, your plan over your feelings. This is where most people fail, not because they don't know how to budget, but because they won't stick to it when it's inconvenient. They budget like it's a suggestion rather than a commitment. But here's the flip side. If you follow your budget consistently, you will succeed with your financial goals. Because a budget that's followed is a promise kept. To yourself. To your future. Every month you stick to it, you're building evidence that you can trust yourself with money. You're proving that you're in control. And that psychological shift is worth more than any financial hack or investment strategy.